Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, people of LinkedIn. Good morning if you are watching on the YouTube. I know we've started to have one or two watching on this new YouTube channel that we've got. So good morning, Joanne. How are you doing?
Hi, Cheryl. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, loving
I
to be
love
here. Really, really great. Really
I love
great.
that as an answer. Yeah, and it's been a busy week. I mean, it's a busy old time generally, right? I feel that things have been quite busy. Good morning to anybody that's joining us. If you are joining us live, good morning. Let me just put our banner on so that people know what we're going to be talking about. The title of today: Can inclusion bring unity to the world? And prep this morning. Joanne has said, just throw any question at me. I don't need prep. Right. Joanne's a pro. Right. So it's going to be yeah, no pressure, Joanne. So it's going to be an
Well,
incredible
first of all, I'm
conversation.
glad that the title of the session is actually my specialist subject. Otherwise, if it would have been something completely off board, I'm like, oh, actually, maybe we should have done some more
Yeah,
prep.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So good morning. If you're joining us live, yeah, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear how your week's gone. Maybe we've both had relatively busy weeks. I've been running the ERG Leader Summit here in Dubai, and Joanne has had some speaking engagements. I love the analogy that you were sharing with about the rope, and that may come up actually in today's conversation. So thank you, Joanne, so much for joining this conversation. And to kick things off, so I've started a bit of a tradition here, Joanne, where I get ChatGPT to write your bio, write your intro that I'm going to read, and then you get to rate it, right? So here's what ChatGPT wrote. I'm delighted to welcome Joanne Lockwood, a leading voice in inclusive leadership, culture change, and belonging. Joanne is the founder and CEO of See Change Happen and the creator of the widely acclaimed Inclusion Bites podcast and academy. With nearly a decade of experience helping organizations embed equity, inclusion, and belonging into the employee life cycle, she has deep expertise in inclusive recruitment, psychological safety, and transgender inclusion. Today's conversation explores one of the most pressing questions in our time. Can inclusion bring unity to a divided world? With Joanne's insight, we'll explore practical actions for organizations, leaders, and individuals, from allyship and power shifts to monitoring harm and enabling collaboration across difference. Please join me in welcoming Joanne Lockwood. How did ChatGPT do, Joanne?
I would say that's spot on. I mean, I often use ChatGPT to write my MC intros and my profiles. When people say, you do a speaking gig, they say, well, give us a quick 100-word bio. You go, right, give me a 100-word. And I think ChatGPT knows me by now, and that is absolutely spot on. That's how I would have written it. So well done.
Amazing, amazing. ChatGPT definitely knows you by now.
It
Right, so we've
does.
had a few good ones in the chat. I can't see who this first one is because I can't. I don't want to open my phone and throw the technology off in this room. So good morning, whoever was first in. Good morning. We've also got a good morning here from Junior Beeman, who says good morning, Oprah, which is Junior's nickname for me, which I'll take every day of the week. And the amazing Joanne, still holding that rope tightly. Junior, we were just talking about that before we came on. So clearly Junior was at your session. Was it yesterday, Joanne, your
Yeah, well,
session?
I was at Junior session as well. So Junior did the I Am Remarkable um,
Amazing.
segment, and I did the closing keynote. So yeah, Junior was probably in the room holding that rope.
Fantastic. Amazing. So it sounds as though you guys have had an incredible session. And then Pauline, good morning. Morning, my favourite start to a Friday, gang. And good morning, Noreen as well. Noreen Zeba, good morning. So, yeah, it sounds as though you've had an incredible week. And this conversation, and, the reason that I sort of like chose this topic, as you say, this is your specialism, and the world is challenging at the moment, right? Things are, as I sometimes say, it feels like the world's on fire. It's almost an understatement, right, to say that things are challenging. Good morning, Leighton Campbell. So, in terms of who we've got, right, I should go through and do like a little bit of a roll call. So, for those that don't know, Junior is was previously the regional chair for the Rainbow Network at NatWest, and is now the multicultural network. Pauline Isherwood is an incredible I'm going to say an inclusion consultant, Pauline, apologies if I get that wrong, based north of the border. Noreen, we haven't met, but I'm sure we will do soon. Leighton Campbell is running, I want to say, an event for International Men's Day. So, there's always that joke, when is International Men's Day? Every day. Well, it's not. It's actually 19th of November. And Leighton Campbell is actually running an event in the Midlands. And then we've got the incredible Kay O'Neill, who I was on a call with last night. Good morning. Joanne spoke at LSC recently, and it was an amazing discussion. Kate
That was a great evening, really great evening. That was. I loved the energy in the room, and the other panelists were amazing as well. So yeah, what a fantastic night that was.
Fantastic. I want to say that Kay leads I want to say it's called the Spectrum Network at LSE, but I could be wrong. But yeah, so Joanne, you've got some fans there in the comments, absolutely, for sure. Wow. Right, we're going to get into this conversation because I've talked about, I've referenced the fact that things are challenging at the moment. We do have what certainly feels like something of a divided world at the moment. And so where I want to start actually is something about, and it's something that actually Junior prompted. So it's a question he wrote on a previous LinkedIn Live, which is, sometimes in the workplace, we hear managers and or leaders saying to people, you mustn't talk politics, don't get political. We don't want to get into politics, etc. How do we navigate that, particularly, when you are from a group, for example, where certain topics have been weaponized? So actually, you are almost potentially under attack by the politicians. How do you navigate that when you're basically being told, you can't talk politics or don't get political? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's been the old sort of adage, isn't it? Don't talk politics, religion, or money in polite conversations. It's been a very societal indoctrination, certainly in the UK anyway. And I always say, well, why can't we? Is it because we can't trust each other to have a friendly discourse, a conversation where we explore views? And I think what's happening with social media over the last decade is we've become entrenched and polarized, keyboard warriors. We've taken out the human contact, and we feel we can say anything without filter. And it's just that brutal honesty, brutal authenticity that people keep using. And so I think what we have to do is we have to learn respect for others' views. And I always start from the position that I don't have to be right. I have an opinion, I have a belief, I have a perspective, and I am aware that others have different views, different beliefs, different perspectives. I talked about this yesterday on stage, actually. I use this equation E plus R equals O. E is an encounter, R is how we react to that, and O is the outcome. So how I encounter something, I will react, and then that leads to an outcome. But what we forget in that equation is the plus, E plus R. The plus is at my perspective on how I perceive that encounter, that need, that requirement, that challenge. That will lead to my reaction and lead to an outcome. So two people can observe the same thing, have the same scenario, but will lead to a different outcome. And we talked about politics. So this is to say, if I'm voting in an election, I pick the candidate off a sheet because I either like their name, where they live, the colour of their party, or what I believe they believe. And I go, yeah, that's my person, and I vote. Another person will look at the same list and have a different perspective because of maybe their ethnicity, their lived experience, their family, their leaning, their circle of friends, all those sort of things, our biases and our socialization kick in. It leads to a different outcome. Does it mean I'm right and they're wrong, or they're wrong and I'm there? We're not. We just have a different perspective. I think what I encourage people to do is rather than get hung up on the outcome about being right, let's say, okay, so you voted pink and I voted mauve. What led you to vote pink? And you think, well, actually, I like pink because, and I like mauve because. And then we can start analysing the why. I go, really? I didn't realise that that was your background, that's what's important to you, or you felt disenfranchised by that, or you want investment in healthcare. And I think, actually, I don't need investment in healthcare. I want a better economy. So we can have these discussions about why we believe something. And I think if we can get that kind of discourse into the workplace, into society, into our friends group, into social media, and we start really drilling down, why does it matter to me? and then we can still be friends.
Yeah.
I often I mean, I coexist in a world where I know people don't like me, because I don't like everybody. They don't have to like me. I don't have to like everybody. I haven't got to like everyone's opinions. I don't expect everyone to like my opinion. So if I can coexist in that world, and we can all start to coexist in a world where we don't have to have, we're not self-righteous, effectively. But that requires a huge amount of emotional intelligence. That requires a huge amount of self-awareness, and also being present enough in your mind to be able to have these engagements and not be
Yeah.
frightened to have an opinion. Also, and there's a great comment, a forecaster called Paul Sappho. He coined this phrase, strong opinions weakly held. And we
Mm.
become a real prisoner to our beliefs. We become so invested. It's that sunk cost bias, that momentum bias kicks in. And so we just got to let go.
Yeah.
Let go of our beliefs sometimes and go, actually, let's challenge my confirmation bias here. Tell me I'm wrong, and seek out those new truths. I think that's the model that I try and encourage people to do. Is you don't have to be right. And I often use this other example. Is I've been married for 38 years, just last month,
Oh,
40
that's
years together.
interesting.
You do
Wow.
not achieve 38 years of marriage by having to be right. You
Oh,
do not. And whether that's not a gender thing, that's just a
yeah,
look. You have to find,
absolutely.
you have to let go sometimes and think about where you're trying to get to. What's our end goal in this relationship? And our
Yes.
end goal is to be together forever. And
Yeah.
we know that's our objective. So all of our little arguments, all of our little debates, all of our disagreements can be put to one side when we think about the long-term objective. So if you're trying to build a cordial workforce, the objective is we work together, we have a productive environment, we trust each other, and we know we got each other's backs, and we can have disagreements. But we know we can let go of those prisoners, have lunch, have a coffee, and move on.
Yeah. I love that, John. I mean, so many things that you dropped in there. I love the equation, being a lover of maths myself. E plus R equals O, so the encounter, the reaction, and the outcome. That's definitely a useful way of thinking about it. As you were talking about that, it made me think of, there's that phrase, always assume positive intent. Assume positive intent,
Yeah,
when you're having a conversation. And I think especially with things like, for example, politics, even the really difficult subjects. So, for example, in the UK, we know that there is this like resurgence of like anti-immigration sentiment, right? But I think if you were to, a bit like I think you sort of said about asking people why. So when you kind of strip back that top layer in terms of I believe this. When you get into the whys, you will still generally get to some positive intent there. It's not that everybody that believes X, Y, and Z is evil, and everybody that believes that is great. Do you know what I mean? To your point around us not being self-righteous. So definitely something about even if you do have those disagreements, being able to kind of like go below the surface and still have respectful conversation. And something
there's
else that you said about strong opinions, weakly
weekly
held,
held.
and different views, and I love that phrase. I've heard that before. Another phrase that I've heard is arguable truths. Sometimes we hold these arguable truths and we hold them as though they're fact, and they're not. They're just our version of, how we see the world based on, as you say, our lived experiences and all of those sorts of things, and how we assess the information we've got. So, yeah, it's
There's
tricky times, but yeah, there's
there's
the
there's, there's two
way.
books
Yeah,
that I would recommend to anybody, both by the same author.
yeah.
And when I actually listened to them on Audible, but
Mhm.
I'm not a big book reader. I'm a book listener. And when I listened to these, I thought, this person has been in my head. They've crystallized everything I kind of hold dear to me and gave us a new perspective. And the author's Rutger Bregman, the Dutch guy. And
Okay.
he's written two books. One is called Utopia for Realists. That's his
Right.
first book. And the second one is called Humankind. And those really contextualize some of these thoughts. The Humankind book introduced the
Yeah.
concept, as you've just put it, inherently people are good. We have this
Yeah.
sort of kind of belief system that people are bad inherently, but no, nobody wakes up in the morning looking to be a dick. Nobody wakes up in the morning to be
Yeah.
nasty. Nobody wakes up in the
Yeah.
morning setting to do a bad job or be a complete idiot.
Yeah.
Everyone wakes up believing they're a good person, and they
Yeah.
set off with that intent. And I think if we start with that intent or belief that people have good intent, yes, their impact may be negative, may be problematic, maybe they need
Yeah,
to be accountable for their actions, but
yeah,
most people do it from a place of good. And I think that really summed up to me that, and it's a belief system. And we've
mhm,
just got a new puppy, and I was watching all these YouTubes and self help on influencers on puppy training, and one of them said the puppy doesn't have malice. The puppy doesn't plan, isn't vindictive. It doesn't try and get back at you. A puppy is just a puppy doing what puppy does. Anything the puppy does that you don't like is down to you. So,
yeah,
and I've incorporated that into my leadership model in my head. Thinking, I now have to take more accountability for the environment, for the regime, for the
mm,
interactions. If the puppy is doing something I don't like, I distract, I change, I move the scenario, but don't blame the puppy. And maybe we should all have more puppy thinking. And in fact, Brooke Bregman's second book, Humankind, talks about the human puppy and the puppy mentality of how we need that reassurance and that looking after.
mm,
So I would say be more puppy mistress, and just look at those theories and get yourself a puppy and learn a new sense of a new leadership model. It's different from having children. We've got two children, and that teaches you one thing, but a puppy
mm.
teaches you another set of skills.
That's incredible, and it's a lovely analogy. The puppy. I know we sometimes when we think about like how the brain works and all of that, we sometimes talk about terms like the chimp brain and the lizard brain and all of that. But I love puppy. I prefer that. I think that's like a nicer way of thinking about it. Definitely. I'm gonna. We've got a comment here by DD Blythe. More people are woke than what we give credit to, but the fear of judgment or careers progression or loss of friendships stops people from aligning with equity. What can we do to influence those in fear? I get what you mean. I mean, obviously, a word like woke, it's been so weaponized. But I think what you're saying, Dee Dee, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that there is maybe, what I sometimes hear this term, there is a silent majority actually who are quite supportive of, as you say, Joanne, just being a good person, including others and, wanting to not harm other people. But interestingly, Dee Dee, your comment here is, the fear of judgment or careers progression or loss of friendships can stop people from aligning with equity. So we are in this moment, I guess, where it's not trendy maybe in some organizations or maybe in certain circles. It's maybe not the done thing to align with certain views and perspectives. So the question is, what can we do to influence those in fear? Or I guess how can we um, support others to be more vocal in their allyship for these causes and for other groups? Right?
But isn't this very topic polarizing its own right? Woke, not woke. We're
Yeah.
creating this binary. I was in London on the 13th of September. I didn't realize what was going on. I walked out of Waterloo Station into a sea of people with flags and Union Jacks
Mm,
and just milling around on street corners. And I thought, what's going on? It's Tommy Robinson Save the Nation rally, or whatever it was called. And what struck me was it wasn't what I would call your stereotypical far right type person out there. There were families, there were women, children, people of all ages, people of all demographics,
mm,
all wearing these Union Jacks. And what it says to me is there's a whole section of society that is disenfranchised from what's going on at the moment for whatever reason that is. That
yeah.
they believe something, they're worried about something. The politicians, the influencers out there are not speaking to them as people. So why aren't we speaking to them? And often when we're being inclusive, we end up excluding. And we've heard these really horrible statements like white male, pale and stale. That's completely derogatory to people.
Mm,
What it's doing is excluding a
mm,
privileged or highly majority view from these conversations. And we always say, well, don't expect me to be your educator. If you want to learn about anti-racism, do the hard work yourself. Don't ask
mm,
me. It's a microaggression to keep expecting me to do all your training. And what that means is people are being pushed away. They're being told, well, you have no value in these conversations anymore. And they go,
mm,
hang on a minute. I've got an opinion here, and I want to hear. I want to be heard. And what's
yeah.
happening is we've got new influencers saying, we want to listen to you.
Yeah.
We want you in these conversations. We want wokeness for white people. Where's our
Mm.
white wokeness?
Yeah.
So I think we have to listen to the messages of the disenfranchisation
Yeah.
and understand why people are not going on with this. And it's not woke versus not woke. It's
Mhm.
not conservative versus labourist, right versus left. It's understanding why people are
Yeah.
disenfranchised and not feeling that alignment with the messages.
Yeah.
DEI is all about well-being, the ability to thrive, the ability to be respected, the ability to do a good job and not be discriminated against or excluded for who you are.
Yeah.
And I think certain people think, well, that's not for me. It's, unless you're black, gay, lesbian, trans, whatever, DEI
Yeah.
is not for me. It
Yeah.
should be for everybody.
Yeah. And I think what you shared there as well, and I'm going to come to this lovely comment that Junior shared. I think what you shared there, that specific example, but it's just an example of one of the types of things that we heard, especially post 2020. So I want to like kind of just address it front on. Because statements like that, for example, we're not here to educate. So there were a lot of statements that came out of the post George Floyd era, which I almost think a lot of them were born on social media, right? And people that know me very well know that I have a strange relationship with social media. Okay, I was telling Joanne about that before. So I almost think there are some statements that came out of the post George Floyd period that were in a time when people were incredibly angry. Social media was fueling quite a lot, and I almost think some of it got adopted, especially by the as I call them, the DI influencers, in quote unquote. And some of these phrases got adopted as being part of the DI when they really weren't part of what we would call sort of good DI work, if that makes sense, right? They just were kind of just these strap lines that got thrown around, and potentially they did contribute to, as you say, Joanne, this feeling, certainly by some groups, and I think particularly white men of a certain class and age, potentially sort of like feeling that they were being excluded. I remember working with some clients where some of the men, very senior, like CFOs, CEOs, etc., were saying, I literally feel as though I'm being attacked when I go on to a call that's like the DEI council. Now we don't want that. That cannot be productive, in terms of us moving these things forward. I want to just pick up on Junior's point here, because there's I know it's a thank you, Junior, but there's probably an interesting conversational comment here to get from Joanne as well. So not a question, but a thank you to Joanne for demonstrating allyship yesterday. So yesterday was the LGBT plus leaders conference. Did you say, Joanne?
Yes. Yeah, Manchester yesterday. Yeah.
By calling out when we see a lack of colour in the room. I felt it immediately, but Joanne was able to make the brave statement and call it out. Then half the room turned and looked at me, right, Junior, for representing a great example of how one marginalised group can support another, which really links back to this whole topic around, unity. And there's that saying that there is strength in unity. But I think, Junior, to your point, there's something about, sorry, my ears are ringing. There's something about when when other groups support each other, and the power of that is absolutely incredible. Do you want to comment on that, Joanne, on Junior's
Yeah,
point
sure. I always talk about allyship as being active, holistic, and deliberate. That holistic. Yeah, I know we live in our blinkered world. I look at the world through a white lens, and because I'm white, I don't see the challenges that a non-white, a black person, a brown person, a person of color has.
Yeah.
We can't all be active allies to everybody. What we have to do is be very mindful about conscious inclusion. We have to be very mindful about what other views are in the room. And I was sat there to my great friend Gamal Tawara, G to his friends, and he said it to me because I walked in the room and I thought, wow, there's loads of trans people. This is a really trans positive space. I feel really, really vibed up by that. And I sat next to G and he said, it's very white in here, isn't it? I went, fuck yeah. As a white person, I just didn't resonate. I didn't see it. It wasn't in my radar. As soon as he said it, I went, wow, yeah, poof, hit me. And then I started being aware, looking around, being very focused on it. And there was another incident where one of the other delegates was a wheelchair user, has a power wheelchair. And I was actually outside the accessible toilet as he was trying to maneuver out. And I realized that the door didn't open quite far enough because there was a bit of equipment to the right of it and it didn't open. The tables and chairs meant it was in a walkway. And this person had to really try to do like a 10-point turn to get out of it. I just thought, wow, that's not an accessible toilet. That's a almost accessible toilet. And I think I called that out on stage as well yesterday. And I think what we have to do is when we are operating outside of our blinkers, when we go, whoa, that's when we have to have no excuse not to be active on that point. I can't necessarily worry about it. I can't think about it every single moment of the day. But what I can do is when it's in my attention, bring focus to it and actually incorporate that into my psyche and go, actually, I need to challenge that. I need to call it out, call it in and do something with that. Because if I didn't say anything, then I'm endorsing it. I'm saying that's good enough. If it's not good enough, we have to say it's not good enough, whatever that may be. And I think being comfortable just calling things out like that, not in any threatening way, not in any critical way, just, by the way, I've seen this. Now we all see this. And I think that's and Junior, thank you for acknowledging that because it's powerful, but we've got to do more. And I'm sure you've been in the room at International Women's Day events. How many men are in the room at Women's Day events? 1%, 2%, 5%, whatever. And I was on stage in San Francisco back in 2017, 2018, and we were talking about gender equity in the workplace. And I looked out over 600 people when I was doing this panel, and I could see about 4 men in the room out of 600 people. And I just said, where are all the men? And I said, they're all next door learning how to be better recruiters, aren't they? Or sales targets or whatever. When we talk about gender, when we talk about racism, when we talk about LGBTQ plus issues, who's in the room? It's people in our echo chamber.
Yeah.
What we want to do is we want to turn it inside out. Everyone who's not in the room is now getting this content. Everyone's in the room. We're just going to have a party and a few beers because we know this already. We know this. Everything we talk about, nothing changes if it stays in the room, which is why we need to bring people in. Racism is a white problem. Sexism is a male problem. Transphobia is a cis problem. Homophobia is a straight problem. We need people who promote those isms and phobias to be part of the solution and not. They have to listen. They have to be in the room.
Yeah.
If a tree falls over in the forest, does it make a sound if nobody hears it? That's what's going on.
Yeah. Well, I've got you talked about something in terms of like the exclusion of certain groups, particularly the if I use it in quote unquote, the majority, or as we define it, the majority groups. And I guess to the point that that Dee Dee made around people having a fear of aligning to, for example, work that's around equity and inclusion. So when we think about, for example, the backlash towards this work, I don't know whether you have a view on this, but I kind of, this is something I've been thinking about. Is the backlash, is part of the backlash, if we ignore the politicization of it momentarily, right? Is the backlash to do with the exclusion of some of the groups, as in these groups just do not feel that they are in, that their best interests are represented, or is part of the backlash to do with the fear of the power shifting from the legacy base? I don't know whether you have a view on that, Joanne.
I think there are some people who've said it was much easier when everyone was white and male. Yeah, there's that view. I don't think, but I see people across the spectrum being disenfranchised, and we see black women speaking out in as I say, this march in London, it wasn't just white men. There was a whole broad demographic. There are plenty of people of color involved in the reform movement. Maybe not. It's disenfranchisation. It's what we're doing is we're not communicating to these people in a way they feel part of this movement. They're feeling that they want to be heard differently, and the danger is, without unpacking this too far, is that we only listen to the messages we hear. So if I'm worried about this and you're talking to me on that channel, I can ignore some of the other stuff which is not so palatable because I'm so focused on what you are giving me. But I think, are people scared? Are people what's driving this? I don't think it's. I think it's just disenfranchisation of the message. They're worried that somebody else is getting cake and they're not getting any. It's what's in
Yeah.
it for me. Why aren't I getting more cake?
Yeah.
Hang on a minute. I'm a hard-working family person who strives really hard, and I see all these people getting it for nothing and getting free cake because people
Yeah.
have told me that cake should be mine.
Yeah.
Whereas, and so there's some of that is politicized and
Yeah.
feeding people sound bites. I'm not going to say lies. I'm not going to say misinformation,
Mm.
but political sound bites
Yeah.
that provoke a reaction.
Yeah.
It's a bit like £350 million saving on the side of a red bus around Brexit. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
creating these sound bites that are often unsubstantiated, but that doesn't matter. That it's not let the truth get in the way of a good story,
Yeah.
as journalists would say.
Yeah.
It's we squint and say that almost looks like the truth. That'll do. We'll soundbite that, and that's what people are
Mm.
getting. Think of the women, think of the children. We've got to protect people.
Yeah.
All immigrants are criminals. Well, unless you're Dutch. If you're Dutch, then you're a nice immigrant. If you're Ukrainian, yes, we like Ukrainians. You can come over. We're not so sure about Polish, unless you're hard workers and you can do my driveway for free or something. So we have good immigrants, we have bad immigrants, and that's down to the color of your skin, your accent, your faith, your religion, how you present
Mm.
yourself. So
Mm.
suddenly we're demonizing people on good and bad, and that's
Yeah.
complete bias and it's media fueled. We love going to Spain, we love going to Italy. You're good immigrants because you speak good English as well, and you're not trying to take over our country and our religion.
Yeah.
And that's what this polarization is occurring, and it's been
Yeah.
going on since the 70s, the race
Yes.
riots, before that into the when we
Well,
started welcoming people of the
yeah,
Windrush generation to our country.
absolutely. Yeah. And Nazi Germany, right? It's a
Oh yeah,
tool.
well, yeah. I wasn't trying to go back that far, but yeah, yeah,
It's a
completely.
tool that is commonly used, isn't it? The divisiveness, the division, pointing to a certain group and sort of saying, they're the issue, like they're the problem, they're it is a commonly sort of
But going
politicized.
back to the humankind book, people
Yeah.
don't inherently believe they're bad.
Mm.
They don't believe they're racist. They don't believe they're this, they're that, they're not, and
Yeah.
they're not. They just have this perspective of I want some cake. And if I don't grab it, there's a scarcity mindset that cake is limited.
Yeah.
And we've got to say, it's actually, let's bake a few more, have some. We've got loads here.
I mean, yeah, the cake that we think we're all fighting for, AI's, got its sights set on it anyway. But that's for
That's
another
right.
podcast.
We don't need bio writers anymore, intro writers. We just get ChatGPT to do it all for us.
Exactly. There was a comment here from Sylvia. Let me just go back onto this. Good morning, Sylvia. Hope you're well. I love Sharon with it, that you brought up the defensiveness of white people, which comes up about race and other diversities. I think it's a very delicate issue that needs to be addressed, because unless we do that, there will be no true equality, equity, and diversity. In my humble opinion, we should address the topic at the nervous system level, at the core of unconscious racial beliefs held in the body. That's a really interesting thought, Sylvia.
but
And continue. It's about
but
generational
that does
healing.
come back though, doesn't it, to the this feeling that there's an advantage about being a minority because someone's giving you free cake all the time.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
hang on a minute, why are black people getting all this free cake? Why,
yeah,
why black people did this, that, and the other?
yeah,
What about me? I'm a
yeah,
disenfranchised white person, and I have
yeah,
educational needs. I have societal needs.
yeah. Exactly. Because I love that term, that I think, Sylvia, the way you captured it with this triggering of the collective nervous system. So it's,
Mm.
as you're describing it, Joanne, triggering, and it is being politicized, but people are triggering this sense, as you say, Joanne, for some individuals, that something is being taken away from them, right? And so, and that almost goes back to where we were sort of talking about, when you understand the intent of individuals, what's the why, what is driving those views to be held, what is driving those
Mm.
behaviors, and actually it's easier. The thing also that I was thinking, actually, when we sort of started the conversation, it was the ability to find common ground with individuals that you potentially appear to have quite different perspectives over, and how that potentially can be used as a tool to actually bring about some unity. I've got a specific question for you, actually, in terms of, is there anything that you've seen done really well in organisations to actually bring people together and reduce friction, you know, whether it's a facilitated conversation or it's a project or it's like a volunteering initiative. You know, what have you seen that kind of like works in terms of just getting people to gel together when they're potentially coming from different perspectives, different lived experiences?
I think it's a real skill of leadership,
Yeah.
and I would applaud organisations that put a lot of effort into developing their leaders to be able to hold space for these type of conversations. And I think we've got to be able to facilitate the environment. And I wouldn't want to dictate what works best or whatever, but it's that mindfulness of leadership that these conversations need to be allowed, not to fester. I was at a conference the other day, and one of the leaders proudly proclaimed they banned all Union Jack flags and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, well, what you've done there is you're shutting down a conversation. You're not. You're saying, well, actually, it's our company property. We don't want flags, but let's create a space to talk about why people are putting flags up. So I think
Yeah.
that's what's happening sometimes is people are worried about upsetting people. People are worried about the reactions, and they're trying to shut down that conversation. So how do we change the behaviour, allow the conversations to re-enfranchise people who feel they're voiceless and not being heard and feel they want to express something in a visible sign? Hang on a minute, you're gay, you put a flag up at Pride Month. I'm British, I want to put a flag up in November. Why can't
Yeah.
I put a flag up in November if you can put a flag up in June? They
Yeah.
go, that's actually a good point. So what we need to do is, as you say, depoliticize, understand why they're doing it, and we're having let's have a nationalist day. You know, let's celebrate St George's Day, because being proudly English is actually seen as a racist trait. Whereas you're allowed to be Scottish, you're allowed to be Irish, people are proud to be Welsh. But as soon as you say, I'm proud to be English, people go, wow, oh, no, we
Yeah.
can't say we're proud to be English. That's a bit,
Yeah.
oh. But we love
Yeah.
a Scottish person who's proud to be Scottish. So I think
Irish.
maybe what the,
Everyone
yeah,
wants to be Irish.
yeah. So have we lost that right to be English
Yeah.
and be proud?
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
uh, and people who come from a different heritage, you know, wherever your family emanate in the world,
Yeah.
you always have a proudness of that root.
Yeah.
How many ever generations that back? Every
Yeah.
American is proud to be Irish back in the 1800s or something.
Yeah.
So I think we need to have this conversation about how can we be proud to be English, and that is something that we can all get behind.
Yeah.
But also, how can we be proud to be British and
Yeah.
not be divisive within our United Kingdom? How can we celebrate the Britishness of our unitedness,
Yeah.
and we allow those regional variations? You know, I've got loads of friends who are Cornish. They're proud to be Cornish. They don't want to be English. They want to
Almost
be
like,
Cornish.
well, exactly. Yeah, my brother-in-law is Cornish, and absolutely, it's like
Yeah.
it's its own country almost. Kay's put an interest. I'm loving all of the book recommendations. A bit like you, Joanne. I'm a complete book nerd, and I do listen more than I read most of the time. So Kay said would really recommend the book "Me and White Supremacy" by Layla Saad, which provides a prompt or prompts to work through unconscious racism. Interesting. I think it's essential reading for all white people. Thank you for that. There's another book, and I'm trying to get the author on here just in time for Christmas. It's a book called "Don't Talk Politics," but it's actually about it's about some of the things that we're saying, actually, Joanne, in terms of where actually the benefit is getting to know people and like almost like doing the practical work of the allyship, the action, the social cohesion, the social connection, rather than trying to debate political points. Do you know what I mean? So I think hopefully I'll get her on just before Christmas. Sylvia said, I speak on that. I think this is to do with the triggers, etc. Because I've experienced it myself and I see it in my work. We go to become honest. We've got to become honest. We've got to become honest with ourselves about this as a society as a whole. There is a need for safe spaces to have these conversations. Absolutely. Pauline, I'm Scottish. I'm proud to be British. I don't want independence. Thank you, Pauline. And then Sylvia, I'd absolutely love to have a deeper conversation with you both about this topic. It's time to approach things in a different way with a different angle. Absolutely. Well, clearly, because the current way isn't working, right? So we do have to approach these conversations differently. One of the things, and we are going to be wrapping up soon, because I know some people are like, oh, it's past 9 o'clock, I've got a meeting to go to. One of the questions that I've got for you, Joanne, because this came up in a call that I had yesterday with some incredible LGBTQ plus leads here in the UK, where we were actually talking about the UK Supreme Court ruling and all of the things that are and aren't happening. But one of the things that we talked about was the usefulness of organisations measuring data around bullying, harassment, and potentially monitoring that data, and not necessarily just for the LGBTQ plus community, but actually across all, characters, just as a statistic. And it kind of got me thinking that certainly in this work, so in the work of inclusion and equity, I don't really think I've either never been looking for it, but I've never really come across an organisation that actively measures something like that and then says, this is the trend, what are we doing about it? I don't know whether it's something that you've come across, but almost, the conversation that we had was, I guess, is it something that organisations should be measuring internally, particularly for very large organisations? Should they be measuring stats like that so that they are comfortable that what they are doing, for example, we were talking about like zero tolerance policies, etc., to be confident that those things are working, and or whether they need to do something different. So I don't know. I just wondered whether you've actually come across any organisations that actively monitor, because we know that generally in society, right, hate crimes are going like bonkers at the moment. So is it something that you've seen organisations give attention to internally?
I'm pretty sure the new workplace regulations, the employment right regulations, include a greater onus on the employer to address workplace bullying in all its forms across not just protected characteristics, but across other forms as well. So I think certainly that the Employment Rights Bill is enforcing that, and I think I seem to remember something about the EHRC. We're putting some information out there and some guidance on encouraging employers or enforcing employers to do more about tracking bullying, harassment claims across the protected characteristics. And we're also reinforcing again, in legislation to make hate crimes, aggravated hate crimes around in society and also in the workplace. I'm not aware of a specific organisation that is gathering stats and collecting this up, but I have worked with other organisations that specialise in workplace bullying as a business model. I guess they would maybe more suited to that. But I've spoken at bullying conferences and other things. So there are organisations doing it, but I'm not aware of national statistics, if you like.
Yeah. Something to, I think for anybody that's watching this, especially if you are in a larger organisation, because, one of the really good conversations that came out of yesterday's call was, it probably is a good time to, really double down on like your zero tolerance policies and guidance for managers and all of that, just reminding people, because of the climate that we've got currently in the world, whether it's flags and, just the whole thing, like it's a very strange time. So actually it's a good time to remind people. Go ahead, John.
The danger with using the term zero tolerance is that you're not tolerating any view but your own. So you've got to be really careful about how you look at what zero tolerance means. Are you shutting down conversations? Are you therefore disenfranchising people's views? So we have zero tolerance for this extreme, but we have to allow conversations. Otherwise, we're saying, well, we can't talk about politics, we can't talk about religion, we can't talk about this, we can't talk about my fears. So again, phrasing zero tolerance has to be balanced with allowing discord, but structuring it in a way that it's productive, it's empowering, and doesn't exclude or doesn't marginalize people further. So that we've got to be really careful about those absolute policies. And I'm a great believer that I talk about safari park versus a cage. If you lock somebody in a cage, you're controlling what they think, what they can do, when they can pee and when they can eat, whatever it may be, like a puppy. Nobody wants to live in a cage by permission of somebody else. What we want to do is create workplaces, societies like safari parks. The massive, great big areas, fences miles away, There's no lions, no tigers, no alligators. We know we're not going to get eaten. So we know the rules of society. We know the rules of the workplace. And we can pretty much wander around knowing that we're going to be safe. So I encourage people to build these safari park workplaces, not the cages. Because as soon as we
Yeah.
start over restricting what people can talk about, we're then becoming the thought police. We're then telling people what they can do. And that
Yeah.
creates resentment, it creates disenfranchisation, it creates a further extreme
Yeah.
because they're not being heard. So yeah, careful of the phrase zero tolerance. And what does that
What's
mean?
what's the phrase that you prefer rather than something like a phrase like zero tolerance? I think it's an interesting point. And
I think what I would encourage organizations to do is, and I've seen it in many organizations, create an acceptable language guideline or a we believe statement. We believe in this, we believe in that. Our view as an organization is racism is abhorrent, blah, 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 blah. This is what we define racism as.
okay.
We also have a policy that says we welcome constructive discourse. We want to create spaces where people can be heard and their voices are heard. So you're creating these fences in your safari park and saying, outside of that fence is where we have our red lines. That's
Yeah.
where our zero tolerance is. You can call it extreme fascism, neo-Nazism, whatever it may be. And we expect a behavior within this model. But within
Yeah.
that, we want you to, we could talk about bring your whole self to work, be your authentic self. If it's palatable, if it's what I believe is right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, that's where we've got to be really, really careful. I'm not here being prescriptive. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
actually, I need to chew that over and think on that. And how am I shutting people down who have an opinion
Yeah.
outside of the safari park or within the safari park?
Yeah. Well, it's nuanced, isn't it? And it kind of goes back to what you were saying about, leaders having the skill to kind of to hold those sorts of conversations. To be able to hold difference, for example, is a phrase that I really love, but it is nuanced. And certainly there's something about how we interpret guidelines like that and the language that we use. So I guess, the takeaway maybe is, does the language help? Does the language help or does it hinder in terms of, the understanding of the behaviors that are required, unity amongst colleagues, creating a safari park environment as you describe it, Joanne. But so it's really interesting in terms of, now is the time to have these sorts of conversations. I think it's the perfect time, and hopefully something that people have heard today sort of sparks further conversations in the organisation. Are people clear about our policies, what we do or don't believe, what we will or won't tolerate? What does it look like? What sorts of conversations are people kind of almost like encouraged to have, right, to create proper human connection? So yeah, absolutely.
No, I mean, as EDI professionals, we often use the phrase
Yeah.
calling in rather than calling out. We want to educate. And then the
Yeah.
first thing we do is exclude people and say, well, hang on a minute, that's racist. That's a very binary accusation.
Yeah.
I'm a good person. I wake up in the morning. I'm not a horrible person. Why are you saying that to me? Use my own characteristic. People have a questioning view around trans people. That doesn't mean to say they're transphobic, they're anti-trans, they hate me or whatever it is. They
Yeah.
just have their own view of the world,
Yeah.
and they need to be listened to and not shut out. Because what you do by shutting people out is you push them further out into their own world of
Yeah.
disenfranchisation, and then they
Yeah.
re-enfranchise themselves around other people who believe that as well. So by not kicking people out of your safari park and keeping them in,
Yeah.
and doing that active education,
Yeah.
exemplifying good behavior, and saying, I understand your concerns. We need to
Yeah.
listen to you as well and address that as well.
Yeah. We gotta bring people into the tent. That's the phrase that I like to use. A question here from Dee Dee, and we are going to be wrapping up shortly, but I'm going to try to get through all of the final comments. Do you feel that the division in the LGBTQIA plus community remains? So do you feel there is division in that community and that trans people remain on fringes? Thank you, Dee, for that question. Thoughts, Joanne?
It depends on who you talk to and who the environments, but I think it's quite clear that within the LGBT community, we all have our own silos of expertise, our own things we care about, the cake we want, all this something. And it's very clear that someone who has a gender diverse, a gender non-conforming, or a trans experience has a different way of thinking than someone who is a cisgender, gender normative, type person. In the same way that I'm white, you're black, we have different lenses. We think about things in a different way. And
Yeah.
I know many gay women, gay men, bi people who are bi, who things just don't occur to them. And I'll give you another example. With the conference yesterday, I walked in. First thing I'm doing is checking what toilets are there. And I noticed there was the ladies, there was the gents, there was an accessible. And the first reaction is, okay, I know this is an LGBTQ plus conference, but I'm aware that some people within those communities are also trans questioning as well. So am I in a room here where the ladies is a safe space for me, or aren't I? And it took to halfway through the morning where someone actually put a gender neutral sign on all the doors. But at that point there, even though you're in the community as a trans person, I'm not sure I don't feel it's my automatic safe space. If it's a trans heavy, trans positive space, I feel more secure.
Yeah.
So I think there is division, but that I don't think we need to rip the letters apart. We're not in a time for ripping letters apart. We don't want to disenfranchise people. We want to re-educate people. We've got shared experiences of discrimination, erasure, Section 28, the way society treats us. Now's the time to bond together, recognise our differences, recognising our needs, recognising that some people who are lesbian don't want a penis in that relationship. Some people see a trans person as not being my kind of partner. That's fine. We don't have to get upset about it. We just say, I have a no penis preference. If that's okay? That's cool with me. It doesn't.
This is the first on my LinkedIn. I'm actually writing down. He's great, Joanne.
Well, we shouldn't be scared to have these conversations. I mean, I don't want to walk into a room and see a penis in the middle of a room either. It's we all have the same anxieties. I'm as worried about these things as you are. But what I struggle with sometimes is when people say, "But you're part of the problem." Actually, I've got the same fears as you. Let's work together on this. Let's solve the problem, which is predatory men. Let's solve the problem, and it's not all men. It isn't all men, and we shouldn't be sort of saying, "Well, but it is all women." But it isn't everybody. Let's believe in the kindness. Let's re-enfranchise people and get the allies in the safari park to start building these great fences and keeping the wolves out, if you like.
Let's get the allies in the safari park. I love that. Alicia, thank you all. Good morning, Alicia. I hope you're well. Thank you all for sharing your perspectives and views as it's widening my thinking. Well, that's great, because that's what these conversations are about. As I was saying to Joanne before I came on, and I'm trying to encourage anybody that will to do more LinkedIn Live conversations, because I do think that social media, including this platform, needs more long form, nuanced conversations where people don't just hear a soundbite and then want to get into a fight in the comments. We need conversations like this that go into detail. So thank you so much, Alicia, for those comments. And then Jane, Dr. Jane Love, hello, good morning. We've got these resources, including an incident diary, which might be helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jane. I feel like it's just an aspect of DEI that I know that, training is done around it, but I feel that we don't necessarily talk about what the measurement and the management of it looks like kind of on an ongoing basis. That's really useful. Thank you, Jane, for sharing that. Sylvia, and words carry an emotional and energetic imprint which will affect our subconscious. Yes, the we use are so important. The words we use are so important. Such a great conversation. Thank you both. Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, Joanne. Such an interesting way of looking at zero tolerance. Miss Burke, good morning. Miss Burke Gilzar. An interesting way of looking at zero tolerance, and there is an alternative word that I can't quite think of when it comes to that particular policy, because it's what the training is called, but for some reason I just can't think of it right now. My brain is
cordial
fried.
Discourse would be probably nicer. Cordial discourse, so we can
agree
to have conversations where we can challenge each other's thinking without it becoming, again, back to E plus I, because let's talk about our beliefs and our perspectives and why we believe something, and not get hung up on what we believe.
There's a word that's similar to civility, but I can't remember what the word is that it's sometimes called. The training is sometimes called that, which it kind of goes back to where you started, Joanne, which is more around, a policy that's about showing each other respect, right? In all kind of
respect policy, acceptable language guidelines, what we believe as an organisation,
just wanting to go to the loo. The sign that they put on the toilet, John, was it just a picture of a toilet? Because that is all.
Someone did a handwritten one, and one door had cubicles, and the other one said cubicles and urinals. And it's actually very interesting. I asked when I was on stage, actually, how many women or female identifying people have actually used the door with urinals and cubicles, and there's only one lady put her hand up. So even though they're gender neutral toilets, I will still go for the cubicle only, and men will tend to use the urinal one. So it's very interesting. Even though anyone can use anything, you tend to still polarize around the equipment in the room. So it's an interesting human experiment. And maybe what we need to do is get rid of urinals and just have cubicles. And then
I'm so glad you said it. I didn't want to have to be the one that said it. Are urinals not the devil's work? I'm sorry, but like, who created them? Get rid of them.
Well, they're just. I mean, having been a urinal user in my past, they are quite quick and handy. You know, it's when you're looking at through traffic and trying to get people moving. But they are a strange male thing where you spend all that time sort of trying not to talk to it. There's all these protocols about not standing next to each other, and you've got to keep a gap, and it's a real male thing going on in there, and it's it's really strange.
We're getting back to the safari park, aren't we? With it.
There we are. Can I do a plug for my podcast?
Absolutely. Okay? Yeah. We're literally just wrapping up.
Anyone's listening and watching,
find Joanne for sure. Yeah.
I mean, I'd love you to listen and subscribe, obviously, but I'd also love you if you want to be a guest. You know, this is you, Cheryl. Anybody who's listening or watching right now, it's Inclusion Bites. You can find it on Spotify, Apple, the usual places. And I've got a very simplified be a guest process. You track me down, Google me, Inclusion Bites podcast, and there's a apply. And if you read through the criteria, if it sounds like you, click apply. And I don't vet people. I mean, one of the rules I have is if you put the effort in and apply, and you've got something to talk about and it resonates with you, come on. And I've had some amazing conversations with random people around the world.
And interesting, isn't it? Yeah, I love that.
It self-regulates, and I basically say, if it resonates, you want to come on, you fill the form in, let's do it, because it's a great way. That's exactly the link. Thank you, Dee Dee. That's exactly the link. It's a great way of meeting people, and you know, I get to have some fascinating conversations for me to broaden my perspective. And and to be honest, if you listen to this and you just want to say, I'd love a chat with you, Joanne. Well, let's do a podcast. Let's just chat. Let's do it.
I'm gonna do that. You know,
let's do it. Come on, Cheryl. Let's do it.
Through my application soon.
I've got 200 episodes on there of an hour long. So I
love that. And you're on YouTube as well, right? YouTube and Spotify.
I've got so it automatically publishes the podcast. Standard syndicates it out on the RSS feed to Spotify and those places. But it also stuffs it on YouTube podcasts as well, so you can watch it with the bouncing audio waveforms and the it has live captions on it as well, those sort of things. So
Dee Dee's put all of your contact. Dee Dee, are you on commission or something? No, I'm just kidding. Dee Dee, thank you so much.
In the way that ChatGPT knows me, if you Google me, it knows me. So
is Dee Dee ChatGPT? No, I'm just kidding. No, that's absolutely incredible. Any final words of wisdom, Joanne, just for anybody that, you know, if they're an individual or if they work in this field of, like, you know, HR, DEI, or an employee network leader, just any final piece of advice that you've got for anybody that might be watching this today in terms of what they
I like to finish, you know, when I do a keynote, when I do a training session, whatever I do, whenever I'm interacting, I like to leave people with a challenge, you know, the call to action. So now what? What are you going to do? You know, we've been live for 58 minutes, 32 seconds. Now what? You've enjoyed it, you put some comments, you've engaged with us. So what? What are you going to do now? ACT, action, changes things. What's your one commitment? What are you going to do as a result of listening to this conversation that you're going to take action on? Because then that means it's been a good use of your time. Absolutely. If you do nothing, it's just been entertainment, which is fine. Hopefully entertainment's good, but we need action. We need people of action, which is why I talked about holding that rope. You know, we've got to come together.
Share it in the comments if you know already what you're going to do differently to this, even if it's just that you're going to apply to be on Joanne's podcast. But share it in the comments. I know I definitely am. But also the other thing, I mean, I'm definitely going to check out those books because I am a complete book nerd. And if you've recommended them, I know that there's going to be an audio book, which is my other.
There are both of them. Yeah.
Any authors, you know, if you're writing a book, you need an audiobook, right? You absolutely need an audiobook. 2025, for goodness sake.
Well, for
So
dog
thank
walking, I've got a puppy now, and I've got an hour, well, half an
absolutely
hour at the moment, but yeah.
get that audiobook recorded. So I'm definitely going to be doing that. I'm going to be checking out those books, and I'm going to be applying to be on Joanne's podcast, and I know exactly what I want to talk about as well. Which is great. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and for putting your comments in. Honestly, it's been incredible. Joanne, obviously, Dee Dee shared all your contact details. From a social media perspective, where are you the most? Are you here on LinkedIn? So if people want to connect with you on social media and follow your content, where's
LinkedIn is without boasting, I've got 33,000 followers. It's nice to people to pop by and say hello occasionally.
Joanne is
I've got a YouTube channel. I've got
famous, as I call
TikTok. Say again.
I said Joanne is LinkedIn famous. That's the term I use.
I walked into this. Sorry, I know I've got a tangent. You want to wrap it up? I walked into this room yesterday, and the one I did the day before. And I've got these people coming up to me going, "Oh, Joanne, you don't know me," but it's like they're all fangirling. It's like, oh my God, how humbling is this? I stalk you on LinkedIn. I've watched all your stuff. It's like, oh my God. I feel like a Z-list celebrity now.
Hashtag LinkedIn famous.
Hashtag LinkedIn
famous.
famous.
I would love to book Joanne as a keynote speaker. From what I hear, Joanne would be absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
We were talking about it before the session as well. Incredible. Right, we're going to wrap things up there. Thank you all for joining us. If you've joined us live, and if you're watching this on the replay, thank you for taking 1 hour, 1 minute, and 17 seconds out of your day. Joanne, thank you. It's been an absolute blast. Back at you. All right, everybody, have an amazing Friday and have a really good weekend. Take care, everyone.